Colbyjack.net is proud to present From the Flames by Trisha M. Wilson. The people of the fire, the Blesa, led by their queens, have ruled the island of Alfeyju and oppressed the Driva, the people of the ice, for more than 16 generations. With the Drivian King in hiding and little hope on the horizon, the Driva looked to one person to save them from the vile Blesa, the Diviana. According to legend, the divinely gifted Diviana will one day overthrow the Blesa and restore the Drivian King to his rightful throne. But with the search having lasted for more than 400 years, will the Diviana ever come to light? Willow is the slave of the Raskpil family. Bought at the age of 4, 20 years have passed since her life irrevocably changed. Her existence is no worse than any other slave, but within, Willow wonders if there isn't something more she should be doing with her life other than serving the ungrateful. Ordered to travel with her master's family to Sondertoft, so her master's adult children can take part in an ancient rite of passage, Willow is shocked when she learns that she too must participate. Will she fail, as all before her have? Will she rise to the challenge and become stronger after passing through the flames? Episode 28. Chapter 16. Slaves. Over the next 3 days, Willow and her companions rode as fast and as long as their horses would allow. While they were not being chased outright, for they didn't sense anyone following them, they knew it was only a matter of time before someone realized they had disappeared from Henfred and came looking for them. As they traveled away toward the center of Alfeyju, Willow began to realize how sheltered her life had been. Always living on the western coast of the island, she had never traveled farther than a day's wagon ride from home. She had never been close to the old border, and she'd never seen the oppression so talked about when referring to the Blesa. Until now. They passed fields full of crops being harvested by slaves who were working under the horrible heat of midday, when most farmers would have rested, waiting for the heat to pass before continuing their work. At one farm, the slaves looked more run down than normal. They were thin, almost skeletal in appearance. Their skin was so tanned it was black and leathery. The sun beat down upon them, and there wasn't even the hint of wind, but they kept working. As Willow rode by, she saw a group of male slaves pushing a cart across the field. The cart was overflowing with rocks and looked to weigh more than all the men pushing the cart put together. The men were making good progress up the hilly field when disaster struck. One of the top rocks, which had been rocking from the motion of the cart, suddenly broke free and rolled over the side of the cart onto one of the men. The man fell, and the rock landed on his chest, pinning him down. The other men around the cart made movements as if to help their companion, but the man who had been supervising the men's effort said something. They left the man under the rock and continued to push the cart. A few glanced back at their friend, but none made any further movements toward him. A few of the women working nearby had seen what had happened, and they hurried over to his side. Willow watched as they rocked and pushed at the stone, trying to get it off the man's chest. Only after working together for a few minutes were they able to unpin the man. Willow sighed in relief. She'd been so scared that they wouldn't be able to get the man free. But even as the relief poured through her, she saw the man who'd been directing the cart yell at the women, ordering them back to the fields. One of the women tried to argue with the man, but he backhanded her. She fell to the ground, and he kicked her a couple times while screaming at her. After one final kick, he turned back and walked away from both her and the hurt man. Willow turned her horse to help those poor people, but stopped. If she went to help them, she'd just be making it worse for them and put her friends in danger. She looked at Hawk and Sigurd. Hawk's eyes were as haunted as she felt, and she knew he too wanted to help the men. But it was Sigurd who surprised her. He'd witnessed the same violence she had, but he appeared indifferent. Indifferent to the pain, indifferent to the injustices they'd seen. How could he be so cold? Sigurd saw her looking at him, and in less than a second his expression completely changed. Now he appeared concerned. The coldness she had just seen had completely disappeared, as if it had only been in her imagination. "We should keep moving," Sigurd said. His hand brushed against her leg. All Willow could do was nod. The hardest thing she'd ever done was to turn away from the scene before her and keep writing. It tore her heart out, but in her mind, she'd made the right decision. A few days into their travels, they passed a field with more slaves than all of the others they'd seen combined. Hawk, who appeared taken aback by the quantity of enslaved Drivians, asked, "Sig, are there many free Drivians in this part of the island?" "Perhaps 1 in 10 Drivians are free. Most are slaves. The free ones are very minor landowners, only permitted a limited number of slaves. These restrictions were created to limit their prosperity. The more slaves a plantation has, the more prosperous the slave owner usually is." "How do you know so much about what plantations can and can't have in the way of slaves?" Hawk asked. "My family lived next to a small plantation. When my father was drunk and cursing the queen, he'd go on rants about how his best friend couldn't even make a living on the number of Drivian slaves he had working for him. He said that if his friend's ancestors had just been born a few more miles to the north, then he'd be able to have as many slaves as he could afford. But no, because he'd been born at Driva, he was limited in his slaves." Looking at them, Sigurd said, "Have neither of you ever seen slavery on this scale before?" "No," Willow responded after a quick glance at Hawk. "I lived my entire life along the sea. There were only a few other slaves in the village. They were well treated, as well treated as any slave is. Before these past few days, I never knew what people were talking about when they spoke of the Blesian oppression." The sharp crack of a whip stopped any further conversation. Looking back to the field, Willow saw a man, obviously not a slave by his clothes, with a whip in his hand. He stood over a Drivian slave who laid crumpled on the ground. She saw the standing man draw the whip back and then strike, drawing a scream from the slave. As the whip went back to inflict another blow, Willow's hand went to Val. She didn't know what she was going to do, but she knew she couldn't watch the beating without stopping it. She knew what it felt like to be the one on the receiving end of a whip and have nobody do anything to stop it. She knew the desperation the slave was feeling, praying something would stop the whip from delivering blow after blow onto her back. She knew the pain when the whipping was over and she was expected to go back to work, as if nothing had happened. How could the other slaves just continue working? She was stopped, however, by Sigurd. He put a firm hand on her arm, preventing her from touching Val. "You can't do anything," he said quietly. "I can't just stand by and watch," Willow said. "We've got to do something." "We can't. If you do, you'll be announcing yourself to the world. We need to keep your real identity a secret until we find all the sacred objects. Only then can we free the slaves and stop future injustices," Sigurd said, continuing to grip her hand, preventing it from moving. Willow turned her eyes to Hawk. He felt the same torment she felt, but his expression was hard. His eyes locked on Sigurd. He obviously agreed with Sigurd. "Fine," Willow said, turning her face away from the whip and slave. "If we push hard, we should be about an hour away from Frirosa by nightfall. Tomorrow we can start the search for the cave and be one step closer to stopping this brutality." Urging her horse forward, Willow couldn't shut her ears to the terrible screams of the slave. This was the second time she'd been forced to walk away. She didn't know if she had it in her to walk away a third time. You have been listening to From the Flames by Trisha M. Wilson. Read, recorded, mastered, encoded, and produced by Colbyjack.net. This work is released under a Creative Commons 3.0 Attribution, Non-Commercial, Share-alike license. Do what you want with it, just don't try to profit from it. Heaven knows we can't. If you have any questions, comments, or rants you wish to share with us, we can be reached at Colbyjack.net. That's COLBYTRAX @COLBYJACK.net. Yep, I sing it too. If you want to follow the exploits of Trisha in Twitterland, just search for Lady Trisha W on Twitter, or follow the ever-dashing, courageous, hardworking, intelligent, and immensely humble Colbyjack on the Twitters as well. If you find that you can't, just wait to find out what will happen with Willow, the strong dude and the annoying dude. Be heartened to know that From the Flames is available from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Smashwords, as well as from our little shop. Didn't you know about our little shop? Why, yes, we have a little shop located at shop. That's shop.colbyjack.net. That's shop.colbyjack.net. Yeah, real original there. There you will find the latest ebook versions of all our works in both Mobi and ebook, all DRM-free, as well as audiobook versions of such works as Firmware Hijacked and Proxy, as well, naturally, as well as From the Flames. The audiobooks differ from the podcasts in that the headers and bumpers only run once, and the episodes are grouped into hour-long episodes for easy burning to CD or for downloading on the go. If you find you don't need any stuff, but just want to thank us monetarily for our efforts here, just head on over to Colbyjack.net, select either audio or visual, and look for the donate button located on the blog roll. Well, anyway, thank you for listening, have a wonderful week, and remember to be fabulous.